Good morning everybody. I think we're going to get started. My name is Doreen Amorosa. I'm the Associate Dean for the MBA Career Center here at Georgetown, and I'm delighted to meet everybody to our very special day today, our Global Career Conference and Expo. And I have, first order of business, I have a couple of our students who have really led this effort over the last year who would like to just say a couple of words. I'm going to give you the founders, I guess I would call them the founders, of the Global Career Conference and Expo. This is Ash Kaluarachi, who's from Sri Lanka, and we have Bryn Negrito, who is from Romania. And I'll hand it over to you for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Doreen. Is this working? Yes, cool. I gotta tell you, one of the most difficult things probably about working with international students is dealing with their last names. So I completely commend Doreen for dealing with a Romanian and a Sri Lankan name. We as well wanted to acknowledge just a couple of people before we got started that just really were instrumental in making this happen. A big shout out to a group of really exceptional M13 students who were the liaison for all of the other MBA schools, and without whom nobody from outside of Georgetown would be here. So that group of volunteers, some of them are not in the room because they're out volunteering, but Ash and I really appreciated all of their help and the fact that they just jumped both feet in from the very beginning of the academic year when we brought this together.
We also want to thank Doreen Amorosa, Dean of Career Services, who actually took faith in us for the first time and decided to elevate our proposal to the appropriate authorities and put a fantastic team together. Also Jean Rhee for leading that team, and Emily Karish for essentially thinking of everything and executing to perfection. We'd also like Helga Kirchner from our partner school in ESADE, who essentially opened up the event to a second continent.
So again, we are so honored to host you with this event here. At Georgetown, we pride ourselves really a lot in community spirit, and I've always felt so lucky to be surrounded by just such an encouraging and supportive group of staff and of students and of peers. So in that spirit, we completely welcome you with open arms, and we wanted to share with you everything that we've learned about navigating job searches across borders. So today we hope that you learn a lot, that you make some fantastic connections, and hopefully that you find your ideal job here. So with that, today what you can see, you're going to hear the fantastic Jim Clifton from Gallup speak. He has some terrific insights. You can go to the Career Expo and network with companies, ideally book an interview, as well as be able to participate in one of 3 breakout sessions over lunch based on your interest. Ash and I have been heavily involved with the international community since our time here. We've been advising students, and we saw a lot of the challenges that international students went through. We've experienced it firsthand as well. So that's what the Global Career Conference and Expo was founded on initially, is helping international students get jobs here in the US. But then as we were thinking about it, we decided that we wanted to take it a step further. And we thought about our American fellow students as well, and how a lot of them wanted to get jobs outside of the US, and it must be just as challenging. There's so much confusing information out there, information that nobody really has the answers to. So with that in mind, we were brainstorming of how we could bring the best value added to all of you. And with that in mind, GCCE really stands on 3 pillars. We wanted you to connect, we wanted to educate, and we wanted to sustain.
Speaking about connecting today, and a lot of you will actually have the link to our Facebook group in your inboxes this morning, so I hope you join. And one of the reasons that we did that was because what we're trying to do here is not a typical career fair. That's, in fact, why we called it a career conference and expo. It's not the goal of simply connecting today and then forgetting about those relationships built. It's about sustaining those relationships as well. So hopefully you'll be able to use, for example, that Facebook group. If you met someone today, a student that you wanted to keep in contact with and missed their business card, just go to the Facebook group and keep in touch. Essentially what we're trying to create is a class of 2012 for the GCCE. Secondly, to educate. this has something to do with the misinformation and the lack of information that we realized were evident on both parts. It's something that we wanted to do to make sure that the individuals who are here today don't necessarily think of this as pursuing a specific opportunity that's listed on our website, but also can create them. And here's a suggestion for how you could do so. A lot of us, before we actually came to school, we held positions and played various roles. So we've always been business partners, hiring managers, friends of friends, and if you think about it, you can actually play those same roles simultaneously today. So as you're going about speaking with people, don't just think about pursuing existing opportunities, but think about creating new ones that aren't on the books.
So we have a challenge for you today. And those of you who were at the reception last night already heard Dean Thomas actually mention it. We were thinking that maybe he stole a little bit of our speech before last night. But the challenge is that we wanted you to meet at least 10 people outside of your schools. And the kick to that challenge is that when you're networking and when you're meeting these people, you're not networking for yourselves, but you're trying to find opportunity for them. Because just like Ash says, we've all held great roles. If we hadn't, we wouldn't have been admitted to the schools we were. And I bet you that you can find in your background something that would be of interest to the person next to you. Again, going back to the community spirit here at MSB, and we're all at GCC, which means we have some shared interests and goals. I think that it's all of our responsibility here in the room really to try to provide opportunity for those around us. So we really hope that you'll take us up on that challenge, because we can promise you that the more you give to others, you will receive back tenfold.
And lastly, just speaking about sustaining this initiative. We at Georgetown and ESADE are taking a bit of a risk today. We're doing something that no one's ever done before. And just your presence here in the room speaks to your willingness to take risks as well. And what we really do believe is that it is our collective entrepreneurial spirits that will actually sustain this initiative and make this a hub of international business. We've tried to create an environment by MBA students, for MBA students, at all the top schools in the US and abroad. And we can only get better if you give us your feedback. So again, Bryn and I will be walking around today. Please speak to us. Let us know what you liked about today, what you didn't like, and hopefully we can partner and make it even better next time.
So with that, we have high hopes for GCC. We're hoping that not only is this going to stay an annual event, but we're really hoping it's going to become the signature event of Georgetown and of MSB. So with that, we hope that you have a wonderful day. We hope that you will really enjoy the experience here. And come talk to us. We'll be roaming around throughout the day, and we really hope that we're going to meet as many of you as we can. We'll pass it back to Doreen. Thank you.
Thanks, Ash and Bryn. It's my pleasure to introduce those of you who don't know our Dean, Dean Thomas, to you. Some of you I know do know him, and Dean Thomas will introduce Jim Clifton. Dean Thomas is obviously has been with us, as some of you know, since the beginning of the school year. He's a recognized thought leader in organizational behavior and strategic HR management. His research focuses on issues related to executive development, cultural diversity in organizations, leadership, and organizational change. Prior to his appointment here at the MSB, he was the H. Naylor Fitzhugh Professor of Business Administration at HBS, where he directed the school's organizational behavior unit. He's also served as Senior Associate Dean and Director of Faculty Recruitment at HBS, led its first-year MBA course, Leadership and Organizational Behavior, and held the position of Faculty Chair for several executive education programs. Prior to joining the faculty at HBS, David was an assistant professor of management at Wharton. He received his BA in Administrative Services, his MA and his PhD degrees in Organizational Behavior from Yale. He also holds an MA of Arts in Organizational Psychology from Columbia. Please join me in welcoming our Dean, Dean Thomas.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be here, and I just want to say to Ash and Bryn that the leadership that they've exhibited in putting this event together is representative of the kind of leaders that we want to build and create and nurture here at the McDonough School of Business. Because what they've done is born out of a vision, and it's about something bigger than them. So I just want to take this moment to thank you and say how proud I am to be a part of this institution, because we have people here and leaders here like you. So thank you. This is, as they said, a important moment in that there's never been a conference like this. I hope those of you who were here last night for the reception had an opportunity to start to meet each other and get to know each other. And I hope that you're looking forward to what we have planned for the rest of the day. I think it's going to be very exciting over the course of the day. This group will probably double in size as more people who've registered for the conference join us. Without taking too much more time, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Jim Clifton. Since 1988, Mr. Clifton has served as CEO of Gallup, a leader in organizational consulting and public opinion research. His most recent innovation, the Gallup World Poll, is designed to give the world's 7 billion citizens a voice in virtually all key global issues. Mr. Clifton has pledged to continue this effort to collect world opinion for 100 years in 150 countries. That's what I call vision and commitment. Under Mr. Clifton's leadership, Gallup has achieved a 15-fold increase in its billing volume and expanded Gallup from a predominantly US-based company to a worldwide organization with 40 offices in 30 countries and regions. As this is a global conference, you can see why we're so fortunate to have him here with us today. Mr. Clifton also is the creator of the Gallup Path, a metric-based economic model that establishes the linkages among human nature in the workplace, customer engagement, and business outcomes. This model is used in performance management systems in more than 50 companies worldwide. He also is the author of many articles and of the book, The Coming Job War, which also is the theme of his remarks today. Mr. Clifton serves on several boards and is chairman of the Thurgood Marshall College Fund. He has received honorary degrees from Jackson State, Medgar Evers, and Bellevue Universities. I think he is a man of vision and someone who is thinking about where the world is headed and how we prepare ourselves to go there. With that, please join me in welcoming Jim Clifton.
I might put this on here if I can. This is a good theater, but sometimes the mic still helps a little bit. Well, you guys, I've done something kind of dangerous and deadly that I do. I was going to give a different talk, and then I met with some kids a little while ago, and they got me all wound up. I was talking to the dean on what I should say, and his ideas were exactly the opposite of what I was going to say, so now I've been trying to write some things down as fast as I can that might be helpful. But it's great to be here with you guys. I know that many of you will be big-time U.S. or world leaders, and you're at a very fragile time right now where the directions and the paths that you choose, it's critical because it'll be hard to ever kind of go back down a different road. Boy, there's a huge advantage to having compounding experience and compounding intelligence. Do you see what I mean? So you stay on one track for a whole time. I'm not sure how talented I am, but one advantage I have over all my competitors is I've been doing the same damn thing since I was about 18 years old. And you get so many repetitions. I started as an interviewer, and I've kind of never stopped. As a matter of fact, I was interviewing people I still even do interviewing myself. But when you can have compounding, I'm 60 years old, so that means I've been doing this for 40 years. But it makes it, I have an advantage because I've played the game so much longer. But think if I would have jumped around, been at Procter & Gamble for a while selling soap, and then overworking selling some stuff at Toyota, you can't compound all of your experiences. But that's, but you know what I did? I've only done some of these once before. So speaking, Ash, of the first time, I hope this goes well. But I wanted to try to tell you some things that I wish somebody would have told me a long time ago. And I try to tell young people at Gallup this. And so if you end up thinking I'm crazy, it's no big deal, I'll run away. And Dean, you can just make sure don't have Jim Clifton here again. But I do want to tell you something about, about jobs, first of all, though. So you see polls and polls and polls, especially in my job. But a good question for you might be, what's been the most surprising, amazing poll you've ever seen of all of the ones that you've looked over? So I've been CEO for 23 years. Dr. Gallup, our pretty famous American, founded the place 75 years ago. He died in 84. And there's 4 years then I came in. But it was something that he noticed. Dr. Gallup loved democracy, and he had a mission, and his mission was just this: if democracy is about the will of the people, somebody should go find out what that will is. Now remember, he didn't say go vote that will, like everybody at the White House and everybody else always says, you know, why don't you do what's right for America rather than vote the Gallup poll? Our founder never said that. He said, find out what the will is and just make damn sure that you know it. But here's what you need to know. Back 75 years ago, the will of America was peace. Just wanted peace. We don't want to go to war anymore. Then it became family, wanted to pray to the God that we do, wanted freedom. But you see those values and ethics? That's what the will of America was. It's very difficult to lead any constituency if you're wrong about what they're thinking, do you see? Because you build policies and strategies that actually make things worse. So the harder you work when you're wrong about the constituency you serve, the worse you become as a leader. It's really important. Now, you don't have to do whatever they say. Don't take that away from this. You just need to know what they're thinking. Because a lot of times constituencies get ideas about things that are real bad for themselves, and that's probably why leadership emerged as a thing throughout evolution. Here's the thing. The great American dream has recently changed. And it's changed from peace, family, all that stuff, to having a good job. Now, that sounds, I always say that at first it sounds like a subtle finding. It's a huge, huge, huge sociological change. Here are some things it does. One thing is it causes a constituency that puts that first over everything else to get married later in life or to get married at all. That changes the world. It changes how many kids you have. Or it changes if you have kids at all. That changes the world. There are 7 billion people. On our world poll, we asked people, how would you like to just get completely out of your country forever? Just get the hell out of Dodge and never come back. 800 million people want to get out of their countries permanently. It changes migration patterns. So a long time ago, maybe 200,000 years ago, when I was going to say man started walking, it was actually a woman, I guess, depending on what you believe. Started walking, but we've always been walking towards something, following herds, agriculture, ports, whatever it was. But you see the huge implications here of the human development. Now those 800 million people are walking somewhere because of jobs. They think they can go someplace else where another civilization can better manifest their talent. That's a lot to think about. Another thing it changes is it changes politics and who you vote for, whether or not you have instability and revolution and rush the place. Hang the leader. God, who would have seen that coming? But if you drill down, 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 down in the Middle East, young males, that all starts with a job. Not Sharia law, not brotherhood, not Hamas, not Hezbollah. All those things count. But if you get down to the root cause, it's a job. That's because the great American dream is now the great global dream. And that is, You are, more than ever in the history of mankind, who your job is. Here's an important takeaway. Most all of you will be leaders and you'll be managers. It makes a difference in how you manage people. You didn't used to have to care that much about their development because they were just salary people. You know, shut up, be on time, here's your performance review, get out of here, no, you can't have a vacation day. If you manage old style, you won't have talented people. Your company won't work and the way global competition is, and so it makes a difference also in how you lead. I was just telling you that I think this is a great focus that you have today. You're doing the right thing. I think you ought to keep doing that. Okay, that was one thing. By the way, we have what we call a good job. A good job, we defined it as 30 plus hours a week. You get a paycheck, and you're in an actual organization of 2 or more people, and it's consistent work. That's what a real job is. What's not a real job is that if I give Ash a little pail of coal, and he gives me half a chicken. That's Ash and me trying to stay alive. I don't want to pick on the ILO or OECD or anything, but a lot of places call that a job. I don't think Ash and I would call that a job. So let's call it a job, 30 plus hours and all that stuff. There are 7 billion people in the world, 5 billion adults. We define adults outside the West as 15 years and older. When we ask those 5 billion people, what do you want most in life? They want 3 billion of them tell us they would give anything to have one of those good jobs. But that's an important discovery that you all need in your jobs, whatever you're up to. Choose your own careers to keep that in mind. Here's the thing. 3 billion people wish they had a good job. There's only 1.2 of them in the world. So it means we've got a shortfall of about 1.8 billion. That's huge. So when you see revolution, instability, and all that in the Middle East, maybe soon in Europe, maybe Greece, maybe Italy, maybe Spain. Russia's getting really shaky. By the way, over the last 50 years, we've averaged 2 revolutions a year. We've had 100. Somebody actually technically says when it's a revolution. If you don't think that's not going to speed up, you're hallucinating. And I think you're also hallucinating and not imagining that it could happen here. Right in Detroit. When we do our polls in Detroit, it's as brittle as many places in the Middle East, with hopelessness and suffering and all those kind of things. At the very core of all that, you won't fix any of them with policies, you won't fix them with armies and soldiers and bombing and whatever else. Occupancy. And by the way, I'm a hardcore American, I'm for all that stuff, but it doesn't fix anything. The only thing that fixes it is growing good jobs. But this subject is really the next big thing in world leadership. Okay, I want to lay one point on top of that. The world's GDP is at 60 trillion. So if you just take the total sales of the whole planet, it's 60 trillion. I asked the best economists I could find, Dean, where it's going to be in 30 years. And I threw out the crazy outliers. It'll be at 200 trillion. So we're going to go, so I'm 60, I'm getting close to being out of it, but the reason I wrote that book is because the last 30 years, Bill, you and I have been apart, it's been a hell of a time to be an American. I mean, just unbelievable opportunity, and we kind of beat the world and everything, and it's going to get real tricky going forward. But what America did was we got most of the GDP in the world, 25% of it, for only 300 million people. If that was the Super Bowl, we beat New England 80-0 or something like that. But you see, if you said, how are nations going to prosper in the next 30 years? How will the U.S. do it? Will China really wipe us out? How will Sri Lanka do? Whatever it is. There's $140 trillion of new stuff coming in. New customers, new sales, new stocks and all kinds of things, startups and shoot-ups and everything else. The question is, who gets that 140 trillion? Now, this is my first piece of advice to you. Whatever you're doing, whether it's CPA, whether on to a law degree, or just right into marketing, advertising, and everything else, you need to be a part of growth. Somehow, whatever you do, how you present yourself and the value that you bring to an organization, anything that you do has to be about growth. I know that seems simple. That's the next big thing. When Bill and I were young, the thing was cost cutting. Six Sigma, TQM, and fantastic organizations built. Motorola, General Electric, all you guys, if you were back, if we could turn the clock back, that's what you would all be mastering, would be cost cutting. And if you wanted to work your way up at GE, the only way you would do it is by becoming a black belt. You all with me on this stuff? You got to become a black belt Six Sigma person. Then they started merging them, you know, Six Sigma, Lean Six Sigma, and all that kind of stuff. But as sure as that, and by the way, that was the right thing. So I'm not making, that was definitely the right thing, and it really helped all these companies. But as sure as that's the right thing, that's how sure it is that's been subordinated to everything else. You want to do it well, but those are people that work for you now. That's not the CEO and the division presidents. The CEO and the division presidents are going to be good at growth. And so that's my first recommendation. Whatever you're doing, make sure you can talk a growth game. Anytime you're in a company, not just to get the job once you're in there, always be around growth. When you're in conversations, whatever stuff you're looking at, be around growth. And the more likely that it's international, the better. Everybody's got to export. The United States has got to export or we don't have a chance. But that makes your own value go way up. If you say, well, but I want to be the chief financial officer, doesn't that have more to do with perfectionism and making sure that our balance sheets have the right ratios? Yeah. But our CFO, he just loves growth. I mean, he's an incredible guy. And if people that work at Gallup, you want to call our CFO and tell him about an idea that you got for some program in Moscow or Saudi Arabia or where, he loves the call. But you see, if you're a sour old CFO, that used to be the right thing to be, but not going forward. Now you need to be some kind of a growth CFO. I'm going to try to hang this thought on you. I don't know if I can get it right or not. In organizations, profitability is really important. I don't need to tell MBA students that. It's being trumped in the best run organizations by mission and purpose. And by the way, you can only hear that from a hardcore, far right-leaning capitalist like myself, or don't ever believe anybody that says it. But the reason is you can't lead very well by just making shareholders rich. So if I just go to work for, I don't know, Hewlett-Packard or somebody, it's not very inspiring for my purpose to be to make shareholders rich. But now again, that was perfect before. I'm not chiding it at all. But going forward, because of the change of the great global dream being the job, and now it's very personal, there's got to be a hell of a lot more going on than making shareholders rich. I want to give you one more piece of testimony, because I see a few of you going, my God, how can he be saying that? We're an MBA class and all that. The best bank CEO in the world, with nobody close, is John Stumpf at Wells Fargo. Nobody's close. Wells Fargo's only a U.S. bank. It's the highest market cap bank in the world, more than Construction Bank in Beijing, more than Standard Chartered. It's the highest market cap in the world. Go look it up. You're all smart. It has a bigger market cap than Bank of America, Goldman Sachs, and Morgan Stanley added together. Unbelievable. In Forbes magazine, but he lives this. Remember, this is a banker. And he said, in this organization, shareholders are last. You guys, you wouldn't have heard that over the last 30 years anyway, anywhere. By the way, if a CEO did say that, you would short their stock so fast. But you see how it's changing? When you're going into a, you should be real clear on what their mission is. And good organizations, I mean, whether it's Disney, whether it's news, whatever it is, they'll have a mission, no matter what their product is. I mean, whether it's Victoria's Secret or Mars or whatever, they'll have a rich mission about development, about leaders or some sort of a thing. You've got to be in, the most sophisticated leaders are into that. And if you can do this, and this is my testimony, Dean, but if your goal is money, it doesn't work out right. You yourself. In my old age, I'm doing pretty well. But my goal has never been money. I might find it hard, never been money. I don't belong to any country clubs. I don't have any boats. I live in an apartment down here. I have no other homes. But I think one advantage I've had is I've had a singular focus on mission, what I do, I enjoy it, all that kind of thing. If you money's really important, but it's got to be assumed. I hope you see the difference. At Gallup, I tell our tribe of people, I don't care about the profit. I don't care about the sales. That's the job of our division leaders and our CFO. And I don't even sit in budget meetings anymore. I changed, I transformed myself because I didn't want to be from Davy Crockett days. My God, do they know who Davy Crockett is? But I didn't want to be from buckskin days. But the problem is if you only go for money, it doesn't manifest your talent right. You've got to be in a job that you love and you think is important, or you can't become a star. Now listen, you guys, money's important, and you ought to become as rich as you possibly can. Don't listen to the president. Don't listen to anybody. You need to become as rich as you possibly can, because influence and power and all of that is in there. So God bless you. Get rich. I bet I can never run for office saying that kind of a thing. But it can't be your purpose, because you won't become a strong, fast animal as you can be if it's around mission and purpose. Okay, I wanted to lay that one on you. Now this gets a little trickier, but the leadership training is one of the oddest things in the world. People keep trying to find, you know what validation is? It means that you look at across broad sets of data. If you just have one, a case histories aren't validation because they're selective. Do you see? So when people give you case history, they're always like a Democrat, Republican, just bringing their own side of the story. But listen to this. There is no validation anywhere that shows leadership training works. You can take that tape to any leadership company and just say to them, bring me your validation that shows leadership. It doesn't work. Teaching you tools works. So I can teach you how to read a balance sheet. All this stuff here, this all works, what you did. But leadership training doesn't. So you say, if you were to ask me, I feel exposed saying this, but all the leaders you know that have risen up, what's the one trait they have in common? They always have more courage than everybody else. And just don't deny that. The other thing is they're also the most honest in the room. And I'm going to define honesty. It's when words come out of their mouth, every single one of them is true. Every single one of them is true. And they don't ever miss as long as you know them. And so if somebody says, if I say, oh, Dean, I'll send you that magazine. Or if I say, yeah, Bill, I'll send you something on that. That's the test. Not the big ones, that one right there. Did you do that? But if you didn't, everything is slower with people that you work with. So if you said, so Jim, you're saying I should be honest and courageous because it's the right thing to do? Yeah, but that's not the reason. The reason is when your brand is that you're honest, everything that comes out of your mouth, you're bold at the right times, everything happens faster. People trust you. So if I say, Bill, I need you at lunch to meet a guy, hopefully Bill goes, he won't say, I wonder what Jim wants. I got to this, so he's got to call the dean, and he's got to call Joe, and he's got to, what does Jim want, because Jim's manipulative or whatever else. The problem there is it takes a whole bunch of time. But if my brand is whatever he says, then he doesn't. He just goes and does it. Or if I say, I need you in Santiago next week to do this or this or this, he doesn't have to go figure out, gee, what the hell, why am I doing this? But that's true throughout all teams. But if you said, what's the most important attribute of my brand as a leader, I would say it's honesty, and I would say it's also boldness or courage. And I don't mean that you got to upset rooms or whatever it is, but at the right moment, and there's always an elephant in every important meeting, but if you're the one that can, with a lot of diplomacy, address the elephant, those are the leadership moments. By the way, it's very hard to train, but if you have awareness, you can continually get better at it. But I wanted to make sure I shared with you that observation. You have leaders that make mistakes and do all. You just never walk into a room, and it's not just generals and CEOs, but even superintendents of schools, whatever it is, you almost never walk into a room where there are people with low courage. I'm talking interpersonal courage. So, but that's a great thing to develop, but you develop it by being brutally straightforward and honest, and you can develop that a little bit. Another thing, some of you are going to want to start your own businesses. Do that. You make sure that you got the right talent for it and all that. You got, at best, you always hear 95% of them fail. People that are really organized, like you guys, can go start one. You got about 50-50. It's a lot more than you hear. But here's one piece of advice. So I made a commitment a while ago. I'm sorry about the word I, but nobody wanted to do this but me at Gallup. So I said, we're going to start this world poll. And they said, how are you going to pay for it and all that? I said, I don't know, but we're going to do the damn thing anyway, because the whole world needs to know what everybody's thinking. Leaders need to know what everybody's thinking. But I had a guy, a really important senior Gallup person, he came into me and he said, Jim, how do we know when the idea, if it doesn't, Jim, how do we know when it doesn't work? How do we know when to pull the plug on it? The answer to that is never. Because when you choose to do something, whether start your own company or a major initiative, wherever you are, if you try something, you will always fail. You have to decide, this I'm going to do, and I'm going to put everything I've got into it and never stop. Trying almost guarantees failure. By the way, I was watching this divorce guy on some morning show. Have you ever seen him? He has leather and he has fringe, and he comes on from like Montana, but he's the lawyer of the stars. And so he was talking about the divorce he was handling between, I don't know, Kardashians or whoever it was, but somebody interesting. And the reporter said to him, by the way, how many marital contracts have you made over your life? And he said, he knew, I don't know, he said like 28,000. He said, how many of the marriages have worked out? And he looked at the guy, he looked at the reporter like he was nuts, and he went, none of them. And he said, why do you think they're making these contracts? But that's kind of like the contract with yourself. If you're setting a time and all the rules to when you give up, you can pretty much plan that you're going to eventually give up. I'm trying to read my own hand. Oh, trying to read my own handwriting here. Again, I hope these points are landing, but here's a big thing that all of you either have some management talent or you may not. Real management talent is really rare, where you can manage a team of people, work with their compensation, and people are messy and it can be a nightmare and everything else, but that's what a manager does, a real manager. You will think that for your career, you need to become a good manager. Don't fall for that trap. If you're not a good manager, here's the other thing you might be. You might be an individual achiever. Don't be afraid of being an individual achiever. You have unlimited growth possibilities in either one. The problem is if you're an individual achiever and you try to become a manager, it'll slow you down, frustrate you, and your career you'll never know what you can become. I also want to tell you, at our organization, this is true in other ones too, we have no limits to what you can be as an individual achiever. Our highest paid people, leaders, our CFO is an unbelievable guy, and he is a horrible manager. I mean, he is world class. He is world class. I'd say that if Jim, his name is Jim too. I'd say that if Jim was sitting right here, and he'd really laugh. But he's so good as an individual achiever, so he's CFO and vice chairman, a huge job at Gallup, handles our acquisitions and all sorts of things, and a dandy guy. But we just build a system so he's got managers there, and they report to the CEO or whatever it is. But you see, it's so important in your own careers that you figure out. And by the way, if you don't enjoy the task of managing other people and that kind of messiness, that's a bad sign too. Because you might enjoy the individual, but there's no limit to what you can become. Dr. Gallup, our founder, I knew him just a little bit, like rides to the airport and all that. There's no question he was a horrible manager, but became one of the 100 most famous Americans ever. Usually makes those good lists of Lincoln and all of them as an individual achiever. But don't deny it if you are one. Remember, you can become CEO, you just need to make damn sure you got some managers around you. You can become CEO as an individual achiever if you have awareness. If you don't, then you'll never make it if you're an individual achiever. I'm almost out of time here. I want to tell you the biggest secret of all, though. Of all of these recommendations, this one you got to get right. And this is a very subtle discovery that Gallup made years ago. Maybe some of you have taken it. Maybe we have a little test that you can take too. But almost everywhere you go in life, the general conventional wisdom about leadership is to fix your weaknesses. Almost nobody knows this. There's no development in that process. If you're going to write anything down and take anything away from this, you'll go to companies, they'll put in this thing called competencies, and they'll work on, and when your manager comes and sits with you, they will sit with you and work on your weaknesses. At that moment, your growth retards. That's the right word for that, by the way. It stops. So the next thing that's just a little higher up is that people will try to make you into somebody else. I love this one. So during my life, they all tried to make us into Colin Powell and Jack Welch. And so they figured out how they think. I mean, because Colin's a huge American. By the way, it looked like he could have been elected any time if he would have run for president. But chairman of the Joint Chiefs, everybody liked him, great guy, courageous and honest and straight. And Jack Welch, for that time, probably the greatest CEO. That doesn't work either. So you say, well, what does work? Each one of you will have your own different configuration of strengths. If you know what your strengths are, the possibilities for their development is infinite. Nobody knows that. The other thing is that if you develop your strengths, you can do almost anything with them. Dr. Gallup, just an insanely great guy. He also had no business talent. He must have been a horrible businessman. Couldn't build much and all that. He was an academic. and he loved being an academic. So he was a PhD in something. He walked around in Princeton with a cape, kind of like Einstein, new Einstein hat and cape, and he just liked to think. But I asked people that knew him around the world what his strength was. God, this blew me away. They all said the same thing. He was the greatest teacher of his time. But he was such a good teacher with reporters and everybody else, and the stuff that he wrote, and then not like me, read it, had to meet him. But he had an attraction like Gandhi to politicians and all kinds. But all of that manifested itself through one singular talent of teaching. But you see, there's also people, awful lot of CEOs, who are their only talent is sales. Another one, this is back in the old days, but there are people that rise up only out of accounting because they can lead so well and see a future through numbers. But the most important thing for you, by the way, Gallup has, there are books around stuff where you can take a little test. But you got to talk with friends, but never stop your own science of trying to figure out what your strengths are and weaknesses are. And then whom your managers are the next 5 to 10 years are so critical, because you have to have a manager that helps you develop those strengths if you're going to become a global star. And if you have a bad manager, honest to God, run out the door and never come back. Because bad managers just ruin people, and they'll ruin you too. Don't think you can get along with them and all that. Go somewhere in the organization and say, everything's fine. Is there any chance that I could work for Ash rather than Bill? I want to be on Ash's team for this. If you can't get that to work, get the hell out of there. Because the mentoring process and the leadership process with you is that important. Thank you very much. That concludes my remarks. So I have 5 minutes for questions.
If any of you have a question, we have about 5 minutes together. Just if you wouldn't mind coming down to the mics.
Hello. Hi. Well, that's really loud. Just a question on employment. I know we talked a little bit about this before, but we've seen, like we were saying, that the developing countries maybe have a place for U.S. industry in that they might have the manufacturing jobs, and then we might be able to keep the managerial jobs in the U.S. or in the West. We were talking about this at breakfast. I'm wondering what you think about that moving forward, whether that creates sort of a underdevelopment in those countries, and whether we should be focusing on also developing leaders in the emerging markets as well.
No, absolutely. I think that, so we were having breakfast a little while ago, but I think the point about developing markets is they need to start somewhere. So there's really 2 strategies. One strategy is, what does America do to continue, to jumpstart our GDP growth? Somehow we've got to export, somehow we've got to transfer technology, manufacturing, a whole bunch of stuff. But we think we're going to be able to keep that. We're hallucinating. But I think that it's got to be something that's always raising the game of those countries too. So no, I understand your point. But it's not like we're just trying to put sweatshops in Ethiopia or wherever.
So that seems like it might be a big challenge moving forward, is the educational development of emerging markets.
Yes, and also a huge market for startups and everything else. I think there will be an enormous amount of money in helping bring those countries up to speed. Also, just in the new science of job creation, which, like Babson College up in Boston, it's a small college, you haven't heard of it, but their whole thing is job creation, and I think that's another great big market for all of you young people to be in as well. The education of that emerging, but also the strategy on how you get job creation.
If you could not fail, what would you do?
What's that again?
If you could not fail, what would you do?
I've had a lot of failures. But give me just another sentence with that.
Related to your statement of courage, skimming your book a little bit, it If your personal mix of responsibilities, roles, etc., was more fully open, and you had unlimited impact, what would you do?
I don't, I'm going to say something, I don't know if it's, I'm going to answer some question, I don't know if it'll be yours or not. I would try to have the whole world's GDP growth be a little higher than 4.5%, maybe just 5 or 6%. And I would hope that that growth would be much more even than it is right now. So it'd be more of an egalitarian kind of workforce all the way around all the way around the world. I think I mentioned this at breakfast. I saw a quote by George Washington that just blew me away right here. It made it right here. But he said that going forward, the United States of America, foreign relationships should be based upon business, not politics. So what he was saying is, let's export, let's not do war and all that kind of thing. George Washington, maybe the greatest warrior of our just over 200 years. Now remember, I'm a capitalist, so. But if the whole world had a workplace that was closely wired, didn't have to have boats protecting sea lanes and all that kind of thing. And so all of the competition that we had between each other had to do with a war for customers, not a war for jobs, not a war for borders, not a war for shipping lanes and pipelines and all that kind of thing. Then I think mankind would have completely different outcomes, because then I think we could work together. I don't know what the hell's going on with the environment, but it looks to me like the seas are coming up a little bit, the planet's a little bit warmer. But it's going to be hard for us all to get along if we have too much desperation. If you're desperate in Brazil and they say don't cut down the rainforest, well, if you don't have a way to feed your family and all of that, you don't really care about where the earth is going for the next 1,000 years. But if we had one united workplace, I mean, I feel like you asked me a question like they asked those Miss America candidates. What would you get with, Miss Arkansas, you know? Want world peace. But I think where I've seen things work, it's somewhere down that path. Thank you very much. Oh, good.
Thank you very much, Jim, for your insightful comments. That concludes this part of our day together. You're all welcome to make your way over to the Levy Center. The career fair is beginning, so everybody, best of luck.